Hey friends, Nova here. Um, I wanted to talk to you guys today about the four different types of property. That's private, personal, uh, public, and communal. Okay, so to begin with, sometimes these types of property get a little conflated. For instance, when we talk about private property um, often people will think we're talking about personal property. And so private property, or maybe I should start with personal property. To begin with, personal property is basically just things that you yourself own in person. Like, usually there's no title deed or anything like that, but there can be. Like, your own house is a personal belonging. You live there, you use it. This is the main feature of personal property. It's for your use, which is distinct from private property. Private property is something that a lot of people use or use the products of, which you can then profit off of owning. It's not often you who operate it or you who operate it alone, but it is you who gets the profit. And so private property is more about the accumulation of profit. So, once again, your toothbrush, that's personal property. Your TV, your car, your refrigerator, house, like I said. These are all personal property, not things communists want to take and redistribute. But private property, on the other hand, is things that multiple people use. They either multiple workers work on it to produce something. You got restaurants where you got to have a whole team of cooks and servers and administrators taking care of the ordering things and doing all the stock and all that. But often the owner of these establishments doesn't work there, or even in the especially in corporate stores, because we all know there's the mom and pops, of course, the little stores, but they're not as economically relevant as their larger competitors in the corporate markets, or the corporate forms of organization. So you have something like Denny's. The people who own that company, they don't, as far as I know, they don't work within it. They just own it, and so they get the profit. And besides, even if they work within it, they're still getting paid for other people's work within it, because by the very nature of them owning it. So we have a system in which a lot of people build something, but the benefits go to a select few who often did not do the most grueling or comprehensive work. So this is our problem with private property. It's socially managed, or socially operated, privately managed. So from here we have public property, which some people kind of confuse with socialism. Public property is not socialism, unless the people actually do control the government, which we don't, because there's politicians who control the government. Even if we choose the politicians, that's not controlling the government directly. So in reality, public property is just the property of the state, the government, if you will. So the USSR had a lot of public property. Nationalized industries are public property, and so are not a truly communistic or socialistic form, in my opinion at least, as a libertarian communist and as an anarcho-communist. These are still alienated property. And I'll cover alienation another time, because this is, it is a big issue, but I think it deserves its own video. But, so this public property, for instance, like under a bridge, people still get harassed for sleeping under there when they don't have a house, so it's like, it's not as if they're part owner who can decide how it's used or gain benefit from it, just because the rail line is nationally owned doesn't mean that we get to use it however we like, or that we even have an input on how it's managed or run. By the time it gets to stuff like that, it's just appointees, and the guy we voted for appointed a guy who 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 appointed the guy who we're talking to. So it's like, it's not even, it's not like there's a huge amount of input there. And this is a big problem with public property. So that gets us to our final form of property, which is communal property. That is what is owned in common and managed in common, used in common, possessed in common. And this is actually a little more, to repeat myself a little bit, it's a little more common than you might think. There's for instance, you might have roommates that you share dishes with, because if you're all going to use dishes, why get your own separate ones? It's more efficient to have one set. So that would be a common property. A small problem happens when you have to break it up, but this is just, a small example. So, people might share a car, and that's common property, but the point is to get a common property set up to a, what I personally call the commons. Again, using this word a lot, I know, but the commons is a set of shared property, which is shared among a community, or, it's got a very large scale, and that people participate in with the intention of improving it, as well as benefiting from it. So it creates a situation where we are all benefited by our common work directly. There's reason to work because you want to see everybody do better, including yourself. So the two kinds of property that we do like is personal and communal as communists, or at least libertarian communists, because I can't really speak for more state-minded communists. The two we don't like are public and private, because they lead to alienated control, which again, I'll get into alienation next time. I think I did cover exploitation last time, which is a big part of it. It's real good. And I'll catch you later. Keep the resistance strong.